Hey, thanks for taking the time to watch this. I want to talk about ESGs and SDGs today. ESG being environmental, social, and governance, which is a type of scoring system that companies are going to use in the future to try to win over investors. And also, I want to talk about SDGs, which are the Sustainable Development Goals. And I want to talk about how these things tie into something you may not think of right away, and that's population control. And I know that ESGs have been billed as good for everyone, and it's for the greater good. It's for the good of your community. It's good for the good of the environment, that we all just suffer a little bit instead of worrying about our profits, that we just all chip in and give up our comfortable lives to live in a more sustainable world. Now, these SDGs, the Sustainable Development Goals, they are part of the UN's 2030 agenda. And that's a real thing. And this is the 2030 agenda that the UN has come up with these 17 Sustainable Development Goals. Now, the earliest I can track these Sustainable Development Goals back to would be 1992. And this is Agenda 21. Agenda 21 was signed in Brazil. And you may think, well, what does that have to do with us? Well, guess who also signed that document? George H.W. Bush. That's right. So, even though it's a quote unquote non binding agreement, you can see how this document actually was the foundation for things to come. And you can really see how the things that were started in this document are playing out today. And it really opens up your eyes to how it's all going to work. Now, I want you to remember that even though you can't do anything about this and I can't do anything about this, it doesn't matter because our trust isn't on government, our trust isn't on somebody else in the world, our trust is on God. And God is the only truth, and that is what we have to keep our eye on because there's going to be a lot of mistruths here in the near future, and it's important that we keep our eye out and keep our eye keen. So here we go. I'm going to show you some things from the World Economic Forum right now about these ESGs, and then I'll tell you about how this actually does tie into population control. First, I just want to take you over to the UN's website to show you the Agenda 21 document, and I'm not going to try to get too deep into the weeds of this document. I just want to read a little bit of this preamble just real quickly so you understand what this document is all about. So here's the first paragraph. Humanity stands at a defining moment in history. We are confronted with a perpetuation of disparities between and within nations, a worsening poverty, hunger, ill health, and illiteracy, and the continuing deterioration of the ecosystems on which we depend for our well being. However, integration of environment and development concerns and greater attention to them will lead to the fulfillment of basic needs, improving living standards for all, better protected and managed ecosystems, and a safer, more prosperous future. No nation can achieve this on its own, but together we can, in a global partnership for sustainable development. So, this is the Agenda 21, and you're more than welcome to check out the rest of the document. If you're interested in this and want to see a video on it, let me know in the comments below and I will oblige. Now, just an interesting side note on there is in 1992, the animated children's propaganda film Ferngully came out, which was a environmentalist type movie. And I don't know if that had anything to do with that or not. I just thought it was an interesting coincidence. Now, you may not think that the UN and their sustainable goals has anything to do with the US. But remember who's the number one funder of the UN and who basically put the UN together. And remember who is the number one economic powerhouse in the UN. That's the United States. So these development goals, these sustainable development goals, they have to be they have to be followed through with by the United States. If they are not, then there's no reason for the rest of the nations that are part of the UN to follow these as well. Now, I really don't want to get bogged down in the details of SDGs. I just want you to know what they are, and I want you to know that this is an actual push to meet these goals by 2030, and we see it all around us. Now, let's talk about how they're actually going about this, because in order for them to kind of come together and work, and remember, the World Economic Forum is all about private, corporate, public partnerships, the fascist type, and subverting democracy. And they do this through what's called NGOs, or non governmental organizations, or nonprofits. There's a lot of nonprofits out there who are pushing for social change, for environmental change. Now, ESGs, the environmental, social, and governance, these are going to be scores that companies are going to have to meet. And there's a big push by the World Economic Forum and everybody involved there to invest in these ESG companies, in these non-governmental companies. And think of George Soros. It's basically George Soros on steroids. And these are large, huge holding companies that don't do business with you and I, or your mother, or anybody else you probably know on a daily basis, or if at all. So it's not something you can boycott. And as we know, they've penetrated the cabinet, especially up in Canada. And if we see what's going on up there,
Follow up on a story that we've talked a lot about on the show. Dutch farmers, they are still protesting over the cuts that they're proposing, not only to CO2 but nitrogen emissions. One of the it's basically the second largest food exporter in the world, and they're being told that they're going to need to cut their production at a time of global food insecurity to basically follow climate mandates. This seems like complete insanity to me. But here's another crazy thing. Canada is now apparently going down the same route. The Canadian government under Justin Trudeau, the same guy who tried to crack down on all the truckers and everybody else, and used really sort of Xi Jinping style tactics against them. Well, now he wants to impose drastic climate change restrictions again on farmers, again using the nitrogen excuse.
Amish farmer faces fines, prison time for refusing to comply with USDA regulations. The Amish are often regarded as uncivilized people, but perhaps there's something we can learn from them. I thought that was a pretty funny tagline. Now, we just see that he's a organic farmer, and look here, he doesn't use any electricity, fertilizer, or gasoline, and he also stays away from modern preservatives. He does it the old-fashioned way. But now, that's going to get you in jail. And so what is the whole point behind this? It kind of seems pointless, right, to go after farmers, but they want it very difficult for anyone to farm. So you remember how the Sustainable Development Goals had in mind world hunger and trying to end hunger for poor countries and bring people up out of poverty. Now, does it make a lot of sense to actually make it more difficult for people to grow food when you're trying to end world hunger? Not if you're trying to also at the same time control the population on the planet. And if you think I'm being hyperbolic about that, just wait and see.
4 factors, a little bit of multiplication. So you've got a thing on the left, CO2, that you want to get to 0. And that's going to be based on the number of people, the services each person's using on average, the energy on average for each service, and the CO2 being put out per unit of energy. So let's look at each one of these and see how we can get this down to 0. Probably one of these numbers is going to have to get pretty near to 0. That's back from high school algebra. But let's take a look. First, we've got population. The world today has 6.8 billion people. That's headed up to about 9 billion. Now, if we do a really great job on new vaccines, healthcare, reproductive health services, we could lower that by perhaps 10 or 15%.
Now, Bill Gates is actually really into population control, and he kind of gets that from his father, Bill Gates Sr., who at one point was in charge of Planned Parenthood. And he was also involved with the push of getting abortion legalized here in the United States. Now, we know that the Bill and Melinda Gates Foundation exists, and we know that they're out there doing all kinds of philanthropical wonders. But what about this one? Did you know this one?
In 1998, Dr. Zabin became the founding director of the Bill and Melinda Gates Institute for Population Control, with a mission to help developing countries create their own reproductive health policies and programs.
As you see here, we have the Bill and Melinda Gates Institute for Population and Reproductive Health. So, yes, that lady did misspeak, but we can see that it wasn't really too far off of where they go with this thing. And this is something that they do in Africa and poor countries, because in poor countries, they're having way too many babies. And so he's trying to stop that, because the more babies you have, the more CO2 is going to go up in the atmosphere. Now, I'll just add that Bill Gates is the number one farmland owner in the United States. And also, China is also buying a lot of farmland. So that's very concerning. It doesn't sit well with a lot of people. Let's put it that way. Now, I just want to show you this article from the World Economic Forum. It's from May 22nd, 2022. Redefining Profit, How ESG Reporting Signals a Shift Towards a Revised Social Contract. Now, the thing about a social contract is you never actually get to sign that contract or revoke it. And we come down here. Indeed, the response to COVID-19 has been a playbook for business purpose and private-public collaboration, from companies helping out in the community to state participation in vaccine development and rollout. Now, remember, public and private collaboration is not good. That's when we start having tyranny, because we lose control at that point. The people, are supposed to be the ones who run this country, and the government is supposed to be accountable to the people. And the companies are supposed to be accountable to the government. So when there's no accountability and everybody is just working together, you're just going to get tyranny. This is an interesting section here. Employing ESG reporting for forging a new social contract. And look what it says. Determining what businesses are here for is not a new debate, but the question of purpose has assumed greater importance in recent years. So, determining what businesses are here for is not really necessarily a debate. If you own a tailor shop and you're a tailor, we know pretty much exactly why your business is there. You have a purpose, but not with these people. 3 centuries ago, the philosopher Jean-Jacques Rousseau described the notion of social contract, an agreement by the people on the rules and laws by which they are governed for the good of all society. Yeah, we have that. It's called the United States Constitution. And this new social contract is subverting that Constitution. And I want to jump down to this paragraph here. ESG reporting requirements are quickly shifting from voluntary to mandatory. Now you have to do it. You have to do something to help the community around you if you are a business owner. With companies under pressure to show how they're improving people's lives. See, as a company, now your job is to improve people's lives. And normally you would do that through whatever trade you're working in, but that's not good enough. And you need to be documenting how you're mitigating negative outcomes. Secondly, it assures stakeholders that management understands the risks of exposure to climate change, poor corporate behavior, and inefficient use of scarce resources, and is working to make the business more resilient. Asset managers, in particular, are increasingly demanding evidence of a sustainable business strategy and are homing in on ESG metrics when making investment decisions. And this is important right here. This is exactly what I'm talking about. ESG metrics are going to be what these large corporations, these holding companies that just invest money, they're going to be looking for ESG scores and not necessarily how much profit the company is making. Thirdly, it recognizes the true cost of inputs and outputs such as carbon emissions, pollution, water usage, deforestation, biodiversity damage, poor treatment of workers, and disruption to communities. It builds these into a triple bottom line of profit, people, and the planet. By combining these externalities with traditional metrics like raw materials, labor, work in progress, and sales revenue, companies can arrive at a more realistic calculation of the value they bring. So, again, no longer are we looking at the metrics of what our raw materials are, what work we've gotten done, what money we've brought in. It's what have we done for the climate. Being sustainable doesn't just mean factoring in additional costs, it can also unlock hidden value. Adopting a circular business model that preserves natural resources, including water, produces less waste, achieves greater reusability and recycling, and contributes to biodiversity. So, this, I think, is a pretty good breakdown of what they want to use ESG for. And it's not just something that is going to be on the fringes, it's seriously something that is going to become most likely mandatory for a lot of corporations that are looking for investments, because all of these investment companies are with the World Economic Forum. Now, to get an idea of what companies are actually being pushing this, this is an article written May 23rd, and this is written by Puneet Ranjan. He's the global CEO of Deloitte. So that's no mom and pop shop, that's for sure. And we can see right here, just the first bullet point, the conversation has shifted from reporting progress on ESG indicators to embedding ESG metrics into core business strategies. The Forum's International Business Council has identified 21 core stakeholder capitalism metrics, critical ESG indicators which companies can report on, regardless of industry or region. Companies that are true to their purpose and measure progress against these metrics are also positioning themselves to build long-term sustainable value. And here we say that answering the call to lead and measuring progress against the World Economic Forum's environmental, social, and governance. So the World Economic Forum's environmental, social, and governance. Remember how I keep saying this is from the World Economic Forum. It's right here in black and white. Now, these ESG metrics are going to be measured by who you are investing in. And if you're investing in a sort of thing that is not kosher with the big elite world economic people, they're not going to invest in your business. So now they can see people's maybe political views. And if the World Economic Forum wants to push a certain agenda, then they can choose which companies they will invest in and which companies they will let die. If you look around the world right now, you can see the negative effects of these environmental policies right in front of our faces. And it doesn't seem like the world leaders or any of the leaders right now have any interest in fixing the problems. They seem apathetic to them, and they want to blame Russia or something else instead of blaming themselves and their own policies. If we take California as an example, they've banned the sale of gas cars by 2035. California can't even keep the lights on as it is. With all the electric cars that they're planning on replacing those gas cars with, there's absolutely no way that they can still be able to provide enough power to the people. The only way that would work is if there were fewer people. So maybe they know something that we don't know. I don't know. But it doesn't seem like they have any interest in fixing the problems that we are facing right now. And they only want to just make them worse, or the policies that they chosen have. Now, if you're not subscribed to my channel, please do so right now and hit the like button before you go. It really helps me out, helps spread this out to people and get the word out further and farther. And I really appreciate you giving me your time. And until next time, peace be with you.